Hi, everyone. It is wonderful to be back with you all today. And I'm really delighted to have with us David Poole. He is the Chief Business Officer at NuCalm, which we've been talking about for months. And the reason we've been talking about it is back this summer, one of my clients who was struggling with all kinds of intense reactions, severe mold toxicity, she was struggling to take certain supplements. We were trying different sound modulation programs to help calm her vagal nerve. And she came back and she said, "You're not going to believe it. It had been about 6 weeks. The reactions were incredibly calm. She'd gotten more supplements on board in 6 weeks than she'd gotten on board in 6 months." And I said, "What did you do?" And she said, "Well, I started this new listening program that worked better for me than the ones we had tried." And she said, "I worked up to doing it an hour a day and then 2 hours a day. And everything changed. And she'd had a fairly dysregulated nervous system. So, David, I have to tell you, I'm a skeptic first. And anytime people bring me a lot of new stuff, and I go, "Yeah, okay, great. I'm really glad that worked for you. That could be a fluke. Who knows? Could be something else changed." But then a second person came the next week, and this is what tends to happen. And then a third person came and mentioned it. I think it's actually somebody on the Facebook Lives mentioned it. And I said, "Okay, I'm going to try it." So I got the NuCalm app, David. I tried it myself. I was having a lot of food reactions, still mostly FODMAPs, where I just wasn't able to break those fibers down, and it was fairly limiting. And I felt stressed. And just 30-minute sessions, I would feel better. I would be digesting better. And one of my biggest symptoms I've talked about on here when I react is my hands swell, and my hand swelling was reducing and reducing. So then I started, anytime we try something new, then I'll ask some people in the clinic who are really established. I got them to try it. They were getting good results. Um, so then I said, "Well, let's have you on and let's really open this up and let people know about NuCalm." So I'm just excited about this, particularly for a really sensitive population. And I want to thank you again for coming on. I know you're really busy and sharing this with us.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. And thank you for having us. And thank you to the audience who's watching. We did a coaching session yesterday to understand the population and the clients you work with. And they're not much different than the clients we work with. So the NuCalm system and NuCalm technology, it was originally designed, if you think about where it came from, it helps understand why we do what we do. Dr. Blake Holloway, who's the inventor and creator of NuCalm, was working in addiction clinics for 30 some odd years. And he was a trauma survivor himself. And so one of his big efforts and inspirations and dedication in life was helping other trauma victims. Mm-hmm. It's not uncommon someone has an experience and all of a sudden redirects their life. So what he was finding in the addiction milieu was that they weren't treating the organ, the brain, where the addiction happens. And it was really misunderstood. And there's a high recidivism rate, big trust issues. It's a very challenging environment. And he said he was inspired to come up with a non-drug solution to managing stress. That's simple. That's a simple thesis or simple promise or expectation. What he underestimated was the complexity of the brain and the 36 million years of evolution of your primitive survival function. It is a perfect system. It works exactly as designed every time you need it. The weird part for us now with our evolution and our pace of life is we have the stress response regularly, sometimes chronically, but it's not a life-threatening phenomenon. So the system is overworking essentially for us. So his path to discovery took him all over the world. If there was something off the shelf, trust me, he would have plugged it in. It would have worked. The one thing he did as part of the system that I didn't have to invent anything with was the light blocking apparatus. So
eye mask.
So the eye mask is really important for our system, and the results people get is because when you shut your eyes, it tells your central nervous system you feel safe in your environment. Mm-hmm. You're in an active acute stress response. you're not going to be able to shut your eyes. Your brain says, hey, I need all the information I can get. I'm going to collect all this information. All the blood is going to my vital organs, my major muscle groups, and I'm mobilizing for a threat to defend myself and protect myself. It's the number one priority for your brain. And we all hear about the limbic system. We all hear about the stress response. That is a very appropriate response to have that. And every animal in the animal kingdom has that same response. Last night, I walked outside with my German Shepherd dogs, about 85 pounds. Not a real threat to anybody else, but there were two massive deer right in my front yard. They eat our bushes, and they stopped, and they're huge. And he stopped, and suddenly I said, he didn't bark. And I was like, oh, yeah, they're big animals. I'm not interested in a fight with them. But I watched the deer, his front leg was moving. That's their stress response, their communication piece. Same thing with bunny. So the interesting thing about stress for us as human beings, I was at a lecture years ago with the head of neuroscience with Stanford, and he said, as far as we know, human beings are the only species that have invented and mastered psychological stress. Am I late for
invented and mastered?
Yeah, I'm sorry?
Invented and mastered.
So it's insane. So we're the smartest species on the planet, and we've created these problems. And psychological stress is what really hinders us, because it triggers the exact same response, the exact same etiology and path in the brain that helps you mobilize for stress. And when that happens, it's all about allocation of resources. All the blood goes to your limbic system and away from your rational system. The rational brain, the prefrontal cortex and frontal cortex, your cognition center, which is your inspiration and your character and your personality and the decision making we have, that literally goes offline when you're in an active stress response. You can't think rationally.
So important, David. So I want to just recap things sometimes, because we do have, and I was in this boat myself 10, 15 years ago, where many of us have had or currently have so much brain fog that it just helps if sometimes we slow it down and then repeat something. So I just want to ask you to repeat this last part that you were sharing, because it's really important.
So it's about resource and allocation. Now, remember, I said 36 million. It's actually a 36 million year head start for your limbic system. 40 million years of evolution, 4 million years here. This is a closed ecosystem. So when you're stressed, and the thing about stress is interesting, the amygdala is an almond-shaped organ. It's your fear center. And if you feel insecure, if you feel anxious, if you feel stressed, if you have a trigger, it doesn't matter if that trigger is real or perceived. It could be a phobia. It could be a real threat. I could have walked outside and could have been a bear, and then my stress response would have been activated. Once that happens, the only way to stop that response is to remove the stimulus and let time pass. So think of yourself when you're stressed, you are out of control. And then you judge yourself. Oh, I didn't make the right decision. Oh, I did this, and I stressed out. I got lost, and then it got more complicated. It becomes a cascading effect, and it's all happening in your head. And it's hard not for us to judge ourselves and stack guilt and frustration and more stress. What we want to do, like you did before our calls, take a moment and take a breath. Breath work is so important. It's so valuable, and it's so easy. That's the crazy thing, is when did we learn how to breathe? I mean, when we forget how to breathe? Some of the things, and when do we stop making sleep a priority? So some of the things we've done in our society as part of being the go get 'em, be a hero, get it done mentality is so disruptive and so toxic for your brain and your health. And it's all about balance. That's really what, if you want to live a healthy, happy, fulfilled, rich life full of energy, it's about balance. You need to sleep 8 or 9 hours a night. You need to manage your stress. One of the things I was talking to your team yesterday about, and she said, what are the big takeaways? As I've been involved in this company for over a decade and lecture and work with a lot of people, and when you're working with people who are really unwell and they just want one moment of clarity and one moment of feeling normal, it's hard to trust, right? They've been burned a lot. They've got a long history of things that didn't work and false promises. And so
a lot of PTSD, David, as we were talking about, so many of us have had childhood trauma. So many of us have medical trauma at very high level, which we know. And this group knows a good bit about the limbic system and the vagal nerve. We talk about it a lot, but we know that when we've been in these chronic stressors long term, that the amygdala gets overdeveloped, and then it's primed for those stress responses, which makes us so easily dysregulated, especially if something's not going right. You get that bill from the insurance you weren't expecting, and all of a sudden that stress level's up at a 10 again. And we talk about how the mast cells line the entire nervous system. There's constant crosstalk. And so one of the most powerful ways to access the mast cell calming is through calming our nervous system, the limbic system, the vagal signaling, and really boost the parasympathetic. So I want to ask people to interact with us a little bit here, David, before we go on. And I just wanted to know, just to let us know kind of a direction to go in for you all. What is your stress level right now? Where 0 would be no stress and 10 would be pretty extreme, the worst stress of your life. If you want to, this is always voluntary, but if you want to share that, that'll help us know which direction to go in. And then I'm also wondering about your sleep. So stress, 0 would be perfect. I don't need any help. I'm good. Life is hunky-dory. 10 would be I'm at the max. And you may be somewhere, you may be a 5, you may be a 7, an 8. And then the other would be your sleep. How's your sleep right now? Is 0 to 10. Are you in extreme insomnia? This is where I was 10 years ago, where I could barely even drift a little, and that was taking Benadryl when I could take it. And I did not sleep for 4 years. That was miserable. And I know many people on here have had that experience. Or 10 would be you sleep like a baby every night. You wake up refreshed. I don't think we've got many 10s here. Actually, I realized I flipped the scales. So stress would be 0 to 10. Sorry about that. That was a little confusing. But just let us know, or you can use numbers. Or okay, good. We've got some things coming in here. So here's what we've got, David. We've got Kelly's at a 10 on stress. Tiffany's an 8. So we got some high stress. Deborah, Andy. Thank you guys for sharing this. Carol's stress is 8. Sleep is a 9. Kimberly, sleep's great, but the REM scores are poor. And we have poor REM scores when we are dysregulated. So we've got a lot of these coming in. I'm just going to pop them up just so we have a sense of what we're working with here. This is so helpful, you all. And then I wanted to invite everybody to do what you're saying, which is to take a breath. And there's a little Qigong practice, David, you may know, where you kind of warm your hands up like this. And then we put our hands over the eyes, just as a soothing. I'm just wondering what everybody notices as we do this and go, just take a nice deep breath. And then if your stress score was really high, can you take a nice big inhale? And then when you exhale, just relax your shoulders. Just And for some people, if that's uncomfortable with your shoulders, you could actually use an eye mask. Let's just take one more. And then as we breathe out, just let your arms go. Just let it all go. And I'm wondering if you notice that stress, if that stress number would change for you. And so let us know, did it change? Even if it changed like a 1/10 of a point, did it change any? Because that lets you know that your nervous system can shift. Thank you, David. I just like to check in with our community here sometimes.
I appreciated that.
Yeah. So we know about how we can get dysregulated from trauma and the amygdala. And then when we have these chronic illnesses, David, as you well know, with working with, and you work with a lot of people as sensitive as our community, you work with our community now. And when people are constantly frightened by, if I put this bite of food in my mouth, am I going to feel like I'm going to pass out in 15 minutes? If I go to and particularly this time of the year, if I go to my family member's house, what we just talked about last week is, am I going to get hit by all these fragrances and pass out in front of my family members? Am I going to be a burden? I can't eat anything that everybody brought. So this is a really high stress year, or high stress time of the year for so many, even more for this community. So I'm wondering about if we can talk about how we can start to shift the nervous system. So we really need it all year round, but especially right now.
Well, I think it's all about understanding your triggers, understanding your limitations, and developing coping skills that are predictable, reliable, safe, and that you trust. You should go
Mm,
into those experiences knowing, hey, it might go sideways a little bit. Something might happen that I don't expect, but I'll be okay. The more you can sleep, the better. And it's easy to say if someone who's a healthy sleeper, yeah, get in bed earlier. Um, Regulating your sleep is really important, very fundamental. And babies do it, and they do it really well. And I always say to someone, you can't always predict when you might wake up when you go to bed, but you can get in bed at the same time every day,
yeah.
and start to condition yourself for better sleep. But I think the critical piece here, and what we've learned over time, is that high stress is incompatible with sleep. It's that
And,
simple.
and wellness.
And wellness.
Yeah. And no sleep is incompatible with wellness.
Sure. So it becomes a vicious cycle. But if you can come up with a stress management technique solution, it could be Tai Chi, it could be karate, it could be breathing exercises, Wim Hof, and there's a lot of people in that space now. It could be going for walks, reading, praying. A lot of people have developed those habits. And it's all about kind of you time, and there's nothing selfish about it. You need to take care of yourself. It should be a priority every single day. So for me, I when I got involved with NuCalm, I was a young guy, and I had a pretty solid perception of my strength. I was like, I can do anything. Well, we all know that's not true. When you're younger, you feel like you can. When I started using NuCalm, it just gave me an advantage over that. It was a predictable, simple stress management tool. So I didn't have to go join a karate gym or learn meditation. I've tried meditation many times, and with some experts, I've had a really great success rate, but I need that coaching. When I do it myself, I don't find time for it. I said, I don't have time for that. But I always find time to NuCalm, which seems ridiculous to me because I've got a busy life, and I pile things on, and I say yes to everything and set myself up for failure, and then I stress out about it. But the thing that's always ironic to me is when I'm most stressed in the afternoon, 1 or 2 o'clock, I've been working from 6 in the morning till then, haven't had breakfast, haven't taken care of myself, haven't even gotten to the to-do list that I built the night before that was mission critical. I said, oh my God, what's happening to me? I get the eye mask, get the disc, get in my bed, and I'm gone for a half hour, and I wake up. Everything is just easier. Everything is
Yeah.
more simple. I can prioritize the right way. I can think about things. I'm not racing with thoughts. I'm not time compressed. And that's the virtue of having a stress management protocol or technique that helps you live in the moment and let time pass without judgment, and then do the right things that you know they're right. When you're stressed, you have such a hard, I have such a hard time prioritizing. And then I have a hard time with emotional stability. I lash out to people that don't deserve it. And I feel bad. It's stress is really abstract, and really it's very personal for everybody, but it's hard to relate to because we don't see it. We don't see the cellular. If I had a broken arm, you'd notice it, and I'd get sympathy for it. But when you're
Right.
stressed out, you just get weird behaviors or things that are inauthentic happening,
Yeah.
and you're curious. Well, now and Beth, as you start using NuCalm more and more, you almost become a stress whisperer. When I go to an airport, I can see who's not managing their stress well. Really strange. We did a lot of work in surgical environments, and surgery alone is going to cause a stress response. There's no way your brain thinks, this is what I want to do today. This feels really safe for me to go somewhere and let strangers cut into my body. And I'd see the face of someone beforehand. I'm like, wow, you're making me anxious, because I can see the anxiety, the full vacancy in the eyes, and not being able to comprehend things, the yes, no answers, the stalling tactics. And then after the surgery and after using NuCalm, they'd be proud to say, hey, it's nice to meet you finally. I talked to you 3 hours ago, but I didn't know who you were. I couldn't
Yeah.
connect with you as a human being because there was no relationship there. But afterwards, like, well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm just very excited about what you're saying, because when we're in that fight or flight response, we can't be present.
Yeah.
And when we're present in this present moment, our brains work better, we make better decisions, nervous system calms down, the immune system calms down. And someone said to me the other day, the sacred is only in the present moment. So if we want to connect with the sacred, we have to come here. And the state of our breath is a direct reflection of our nervous system. So I'm always checking in. I have a yoga background. Am I breathing up here? Can I bring it down lower? And just by relaxing into my breath, but then I can't sustain it, David. So like you, I need modalities that kind of give me a reset for my day. And you were talking about not having enough time. And this is such a common refrain. And I think it's because now you're a CEO, CBO, you're busy, you've got a lot on your shoulders. And I work with people from CEOs to people who are retired or they're not able to work. And everybody says, I don't have enough time. And I think it's because we've not valued it enough in our culture. We value drinking enough water in the wellness community. We value eating cleanly. And we need to just as much value this time to reset our nervous systems. And Thich Nhat Hanh has a quote I love that says, meditate 20 minutes every day. Unless you don't have time, then meditate for an hour.
Brilliant. It's true.
Because that's another amygdala hijacking. Oh, it's not safe to calm down. It's not safe to do this nervous system rebooting, because from that amygdala perspective, which doesn't understand psychological stress, just understands biochemical. So everything's a saber-toothed tiger, whether it's that bill or, oh my God, I just found a water leak. How fast am I going to cleaned up before there's mold growing, or whatever it is, feels like we're running from a saber-toothed tiger. And if you're running from a saber-toothed tiger, it's not safe to lie down and meditate. So I think we have to also have a dialogue. I have a lot of dialogues with my limbic system. And I learned that from some of the limbic work, and just to say, well, I know it feels like we have to be running, but there's no physical stress. And I'll actually make myself look around and I'll touch things and bring myself into the moment with sensation and go, is it safe to lie down and do this listening program for my nervous system to help me heal? And then usually it'll settle, things will settle, and it's almost like getting buy-in from these different parts, if that makes sense, David.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things, Beth, that's really interesting too is the morning routine. Your morning routine is really critical to set you up for success for the rest of the day. So the amygdala wakes up first. So your limbic system wake and alert when you're starting to come to. And what does that mean? That means the sabotage is there. The negative, oh, am I going to have a terrible day? I've got to do this. Oh, I should have done this last night. I've got to meet with this person. And you start to stress. You haven't even gotten out of bed yet. I think
sometimes I wake up with anxiety and I don't even have thoughts yet.
Yeah. Well, like I just said, so it's a limbic system. It's just part of our physiology. You can't change that, but you can give yourself an hour in the morning. Say, hey, this first hour is about me. I don't care about the rest of the world, and the rest of the world doesn't care about me. So let's do something that's interesting. It could be get up and work out. It could be get up and read a book. It could be get up and do prayer and meditation and yoga. And don't reach for the phone, and don't turn on the TV, and don't do things that are going to distract you from the mission of resetting yourself to optimize for a really powerful, strong day, and accomplish things that are important to you versus the promises you made to everybody else. And if it means, hey, I've got 2 small kids and they've got the bus and I got to make lunches and breakfast and get them out of bed. So set your alarm an hour early. It's going to sound ridiculous and it could disrupt your sleep, of course. And then you got to change that when you retire at night. But that morning time should be the sacred moments like you just mentioned. And it's really important. Otherwise, you get out and you're getting kicked around by everybody else and your own limbic system for an day. That's exhausting.
It's been really hard for me to get back later in my day to do a practice if I say, well, I'm going to do it at 2:00. Yeah. And so you and I have the luxury of getting to design our lives. And so I just shifted my work start time. And so that I can get that in first in the morning. Some people have, 2, 3-year-olds, and they don't really like to go back to bed and wait for mommy and daddy to finish their meditation. And so with parents, they've sometimes had to carve it out. Like, okay, I drop the kids off at preschool or at school. I come home And as soon as I walk in the door, I'm going to do my practice. And that, however we do it, it takes some training of ourselves, 30 days to build a new habit. But I found that some people got to do that little bit of configuring in their lives. But for most people, that first morning works really well. So many people have been excited about hearing about NuCalm, David. So I want to ask you about how sound programs can shift the nervous system, and tell us about what NuCalm is. And I know we have a really special free introductory offer for people today. I want to make sure to save time that we can share that with them so they can check it out for free.
So think of NuCalm as a personal friend that's going to help you, never judge you, and deliver what you need when you need it. It is literally a combination of the light blocking, the eye mask. There is a biosignal processing disc. There's a delivery of neurochemical information to the brain to upregulate GABA production and interrupt the stress response. So it's the same effect that you get from benzodiazepines, you get from alcohol, that it binds to the same receptor sites. Now, alcohol and benzodiazepines are not healthy, smart.
They have a lot of side effects.
They have side effects. They have addictive qualities. They're not. I wouldn't build a lifestyle around those therapies. And then you've got the music.
I tried, David, in college. It didn't work.
I try. I keep sampling it. I'm not a fast learner.
That really was how I had so much dysregulation, was that alcohol was the only way I could feel normal.
Yeah.
And so I started drinking at 13. I stopped at 26. And I wasn't an alcoholic. I could manage myself, but I would drink because I could feel calm for a little bit. And of course, it snowballed.
Yeah.
And a lot of us have used benzodiazepines because they're also mast cell stabilizers, but then they're really hard to come off.
Well, alcohol is tricky because it's socially acceptable, and it works. It resolves psychic pain really reliably. Yeah, you have tolerance and you have to drink more over time, but so it is an effective solution for that. So like I said, the GABA works in the same receptor sites, but this is organic. It's not a chemical reaction. And then the neuroacoustic software. This is where the power and potency and the method of action really is for NuCalm. It's about the entrainment piece. So your brain wants absolute control over everything that happens in between your ears. And everyone's heard of binaural beats. There's thousands of applications out there, some really capable. It's an industry, if you will. But with binaural beats, they'll be effective once or twice. They lose efficacy over time because your brain loves shortcuts.
That's why I have to keep changing them.
Well, they have to keep changing, yes. So your brain loves shortcuts and patterns because it's doing so much work all the time. So as soon as you wake up in the morning, when I said about the stress response and the amygdala is up first, you're taking in data from all of your senses. And your brain's doing its number one job of, do I feel safe, comfortable? Do I trust my environment? Is it okay? So when it sees a shortcut or a pattern, it'll take on that because it's doing so many sub-second transactions. But it also likes to understand and be in control of what's happening. So it'll figure out that pattern the second, third, fourth time you use a binaural beat. So first you're like, wow, that really worked. I don't feel stressed. That's amazing. I can't wait to do it again the next time I feel out of balance. Next time it'll have some effect like, okay, that wasn't quite as profound, but it still helped. The third time or fourth time, you're like, okay, I did squat. Now what?
Yeah,
right?
That's what I found when I did HemiSync and then with Brain Tap. And we've worked with both of those programs in the clinic. With the Brain Tap, you had to change the recording every time.
Yes.
And so you had to have a large suite of offerings.
So Dr. Holloway, God bless him, an interesting gentleman, a really bright guy, built to serve. He never took care of himself. He never asked for anything for himself. I spent weeks with him at a time. And at one time I said, hey, does anyone ever call you and say, how you doing, Blake? Everyone's like, I need this, I need that. But his mandate for solving this problem without narcotics really was because he needed to build trust really quickly. Let's say he was working with someone from the war in Afghanistan, and they're the ones who were driving, took a wrong turn, and their entire team got blown up. And there's a record of it. He knows what happened. And he's got the survivor's guilt. He's got the PTSD. He's got the drug and alcohol abuse. He's got the isolation. It's such a complex and ugly prison sentence for a young child, right? A 20-year-old kid. So Dr. Holly said, hey, I can never fail them, especially early in a transaction. They need to trust me with their life. They need to trust me immediately, and it needs to be long-term. So he was an interesting guy. And also Blake, part of his Asperger's phenomenon, I think, was he was a perfectionist. He hated when you'd ask a question or challenge him. I ask a question. I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm not a biochemist. He'd say, wow, Dave, it always surprised me how much you don't understand about the brain. I was like, I'm trying to learn, I'm trying to. So
yeah, that's a very Asperger. I have Asperger's. Came a long way, but I would have said that in college.
Very much so, which I appreciate because I knew he was going to help me anyway. The good part about that was his perfectionist. So with the binaural beats, don't think he didn't try that. Don't think he didn't say, hey, let's use this. This will be great to plug into this ecosystem and give me the reliable results. It didn't work predictably. It didn't work effectively, and it wasn't long-term. So he came up with an algorithm that is non-linear and it constantly oscillates. So I always say we bring a tank to a knife fight. We don't want to have any opportunity for your brain to solve this problem or to figure out this pattern. So we'll change.
Then it's not going to work anymore.
I'm sorry?
The reason that's important was because if you don't scramble the pattern, then repeating it's just not going to work.
Exactly.
You're going to have to
keep switching.
You have 500 options to cycle through.
And then you lose trust and the relationship is broken.
But you have this algorithm at the beginning of these recordings so that the brain can't figure out a pattern. But I also know you have a few different recordings it cycles through as well.
Sure.
But that's making this more effective. So that's one of the reasons. I think also the binaural beats can be agitating. People are really sensitive.
Well, we have a binaural beat delivery mechanism because you want to present your midbrain with two different signals. That is important. So if I wanted to pace your brain at 8 hertz, which is right in the sweet spot of alpha, right before theta, which is really relaxing, I'd go 112 here and 104 over here. But with the binaural beats, that's just static. And that's where your brain says, okay, I figured it out. I'm good. With NuCalm, we say, okay, we're going to change it. We're going to change it all the time. You're not going to figure out the changing pattern. You're not going to figure out so you're always doing math. So for me as an employee and as someone who got involved in this tech years and years ago, when we got involved, it was a concept. It wasn't a delivery. We didn't have a product. But watching it in a clinical setting with doctors, and we reached out to the best doctors we could find. So, hey, you're the best in the business. And like you said, Beth, people are skeptical generally. Doctors are really skeptical. So I'd say, hey, let me just bring it over and let's see what we can do. I don't know what it can do. I didn't invent it. So I don't have that inventoritis. I've got no emotional attachment. I just want to see results and data. And to a person, every single time, it was a mind bender. They'd say, I can't. I'm doing surgery on someone and they don't care. They're not moving. They're not challenging me. This is unbelievable. So that repetition over time and consistency, I'll go to someone's office, I'll put them on NuCalm and I'll leave. And the person, the assistant or people in the office like, what are you doing leaving? I was like, I don't need to watch a grown man take a nap. And there's nothing can happen. He's going to wake up. He's going to wake up. I'll come back when he wakes up. It's so predictable. The thing I like about this the best is your journeys are always different because your chemistry is different. Your sense of your human experience is different. Your pain is different every day or different every minute, right? With frequencies. But for me, it's an exploration of your subconscious, and it's a way to unplug and tune out and literally just invest in yourself, which I said, hey, it feels guilty. I have 2 kids that I raise. I've got a dog and a spouse and employees and everybody I want to serve. It makes me feel good to deliver. That's how I get my joy. But the NuCalm for me, it's just an escape from reality for a short time every single day. It allows me to be a little more calm, a little more present, and a lot more in control.
Yeah.
It's the stress management thing. So for me, this is a cheat code for stress management. I have never had sleep issues, and I can relate to that because I meet with people all the time who say, hey, I haven't slept for 4 years. And you can see it. You can see it in their physiology. You can see it in their desperation. And it's a brutal way to go through life because, first of all, you're alone at 4 a.m. No companion. And then you're frustrated. And then it's all in your head. Well, I need to sleep. I've got an early morning meeting, which causes a stress response, which blocks melatonin production. And lo and behold, you've created a hostile environment for sleep. So for your clients and your team, it's all about come up with a predictable, reliable time of day, regardless if you're traveling, regardless if it's the holidays, where you can take care of yourself. That's why the mornings I say, hey, before people know you're awake and they're going to
Yeah.
bother you, let's use that as
Right.
precious time. And make this an important ritual for you. And it doesn't have to be NuCalm. I'm not here to sell NuCalm at all. I'm here to give you an opportunity to try something that may or may not benefit you. But the stress management program is mission critical to your health. End of story. There's no debate about that. And it will absolutely improve your sleep. When someone says,
Yeah.
hey, my sleep is terrible, I'm not getting enough REM sleep, it's all stress modulation. It's all the lack of homeostasis. And remember, as primitive human beings, and we are, our physiology is still, it's brilliant in a lot of ways. Our brains are incredible, but we're diurnal animals. So as soon as it's light deprived, right, the sun goes down, especially now in the wintertime, we're supposed to sleep for 14 hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like every other animal. We're not
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be watching TV and electricity is what caused the initial problem. Maybe it was gas lamps first, or we could cheat the code here to the system. But now with blue light and phones, and I don't have this anywhere near my bedroom. I don't need it. It doesn't serve me at all for my sleep hygiene, for my life, for my waking up. And it's a blessing when I can't find my phone in the morning. I'm like, good. I've got more free time. Who needs the baloney? So around sleep, the thing that, and the nice part about this, Beth, and you know this, when you start having some success, you attract really good talent in research and doctors and the cynics, right? They come to you like, hey, I heard about this. I want to prove that I'm right and you're wrong, type of thing. The sleep piece is very challenging. And it's sad because we're born perfect. Even if you have 9 toes, it's still, you're perfect. And your body knows how to operate a perfect operating system. And sleep is the way you maintain that through your life. One of the things to pay attention to is really be regulated and rigid about your sleep habit.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to change your retirement time, say you naturally fall asleep around 11 p.m. and you say, if I go to bed at 10 o'clock, I'll get better sleep. I can get up earlier and I can be more productive, whatever the reason is or inspiration. You have to, like you said, a habit takes 30 days. You have to change your sleep habit in 15-minute increments. So it's going to take you 4 months to move from 11 p.m. to 10 p.m. And why is that? Because, and you know this, your body loves patterns. It has no concept of you, hey, I've got a deadline, so I'm going to stay up late. Your body's like, what's a deadline? Here's where I've already started releasing melatonin at 6 p.m. because you usually sleep at 10 o'clock. Can't stop that process. I'm not willing to stop that process. So remember, you're working against a lot of biological clocks and a lot of systems that are perfect. And they have a system, they have the information, they know exactly what they're doing. It's not easy for you to say, well, my mind over matter, I'm going to do this instead. So regulate that retirement time, get rid of the blue light, get rid of the TV. Shouldn't do any entertainment. The whole sleep hygiene thing are really obvious things. But when you're restless, I've never had insomnia, but I've been restless maybe 10 times in my life. And I'm talking about restlessness for about 4 minutes. And I'm going berserkers. Like, I can't believe I can't sleep.
That sounds like a dream for most of us.
I feel like such a jerk. I was like, oh my God, that was a terrible night. I was up from 118 to 122.
Most of us are up from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m.
My grandmother,
she'd
be sitting on the couch reading a book. I'm like, it's 4 a.m. She's like, I don't sleep. I was like, well, I do. I'm going back to bed. Sorry.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to share with people is the client I mentioned before who initially told me about this. She also had extreme insomnia. Wow. And it didn't go away the first night or the second night, but over time, her sleep gradually improved. And one of the things I always think about is when we're in this amygdala hijacking, where we're in sympathetic fight or flight, if we're in sympathetic, sleep and healing is the parasympathetic mode. So sympathetic means no sleep, no healing. So we've got to remember that. But then I would encourage people to give it a try. Try that 7-day trial. If you like it, then just try it for a couple months and see what happens and really do it regularly. And one of the ways I always think of this is we got to shift out of sympathetic fight or flight if we want to sleep, because again, the body doesn't know, am I running from a saber-toothed tiger or a financial bill or a fight that I had with my partner? What am I running from? And so when we're in this state, it's similar to if there's a bear sleeping in the guest room. There's a bear in the guest room. It doesn't matter if it's real or imagined. You're probably not going to fall asleep. So we've got to reprogram. And this is especially critical for any of us who've been in mold exposure, because those molecules hit the olfactory nerve that goes directly into the limbic system. That's why I really like people tolerate to use things like essential oils, because it helps reprogram that olfactory nerve into safety. But so I want to get a little into nuts and bolts here and share this offer with people, David. And we got a few questions that came in. There's some different suites that people can sign up for, or there's different recordings. And what we've determined works the best for our population, I'm going to pull up here for people, David, so they can see it, because it really helps them to have a visual here.
Yeah.
Let me see. Here we go. So there's something called a sleep suite that has the rescue, it has the power nap, and the deep sleep. And then there's some other ones that have like Edge, and that's more for productivity. So that's not what we're looking for our.
I would suggest Edge is for people who are healthy and are just looking for different advantages.
Yeah.
Who are not where they want to be in their health profile. Absolutely focus on stress management, sleep. Don't waste your time on anything else.
Yeah. And so if you want a variety, this is the suite that our clients are using. Or if you just want to try one, I would try the rescue. Either way, this is what I use, is this grouping of these three. And then occasionally I'll use the flow state and some of those. I've not used the what's the one that's red?
Ignite.
I've not used the Ignite, but I'll use the flow state and some of things like that if I want to just get my brain working for doing an interview or things like that. But this is what I really encourage people to look at and to work with. And the really cool thing too is that you can download the recordings and then put your phone in airplane mode. And then what I use over the headphones, and then I use an EMF blocker on the end of the headphones. And we can post that in for you guys if you want to know that. One of the other little tips I like to tell people is for some people, we've super chemically sensitive people in our audience. So for some people, the eye mask, they need to let air out for a little bit, because you'll get an eye mask. And then if you're just incredibly sensitive, you can always just use your own eye mask. That's okay. But I also wanted to ask you, David, to show people the signaling discs.
Sure.
And tell them a little bit about that, because that's so unique. You can use this without the disc, but I used the discs and I was really impressed. And I was super skeptical, I have to be honest, David. I just thought, this looks like a sticker. What's this going to do for me? And I've studied acupressure and meridians and all of that, but when I put it on, I went, oh, this is actually activating the GABA system. I could feel it pretty quickly.
Yep. It's a very complex, it's quantum physics, and I have zero understanding or capacity to learn about the design and how it's built. But what I care about is efficacy. So there's a bit of an evolution here. We started with a chewable supplement, and when we were doing surgical settings, or especially in the dental industry, someone comes with a cracked tooth, they can't chew a supplement. So it was a blocker. And then the only two, when someone is stressed out, they weren't following instructions. You were supposed to hold it under your tongue for 2 minutes for sublingual absorption, rapid onset. They'd swallow it, and they'd be like, well, okay, we agreed that you were going to chew it and hold it. Let's try that again. 3 or 4 times. So we're like, okay, that's not working. So we moved to a transdermal cream, which was very effective. And we test everything using HRV with our partners at Harvard Medical School. And it's a very rigorous test. It's clinical strength. It's not your Oura Ring and Whoop and those kinds of things. And so it takes us a long time to validate. And then Dr. Holloway, he's one, like I said, he's a perfectionist and wants 100% efficacy and efficiencies. He said, I've got to come up with a better way versus supplementation of transdermal cream to give information to the brain. That's all I need to do. And so I didn't know what he was talking about. I didn't know what he was trying to do. And I got an envelope with these stickers. And Dr. Holloway called really excited, said, hey, I want you to try this. Don't use the stimulation device. Don't use the supplementation, and tell me how you feel. And I called him, and I've been doing NuCalm now, regularly for almost a decade. So I had a really good knowledge base and personal experience. And I called him and said, what happened? I was out for about 55 minutes. Usually my sweet spot is about 25 to 30 minutes. And I wasn't really stressed, and it was overwhelmingly powerful. And he said, well, I've taken all the information, the data points that your brain needs to produce GABA, and I put it on this sticker. You can call it dots, stickers. We call it the
we've talked some about this technology, and we're going to talk more about it next week at this quantum field technology, David. I just want to share with people, because we've been talking about these Pranon devices that use, I'll have to hold it up this way, that use quantum fields, and they generate a healing field. So this is a similar thing. It won't have the EMF shielding as intensely as these larger devices, but that's going to have more of a direct effect, is what David's showing us. And if you want to join us next week, we're going to get more into the kind of the technology overall. This
is all things he conceived of and invented years and years ago that we're just starting to learn and still not necessarily understanding. Awesome read, by the way, if you have a chance, you're interested in electromedicine. So for the discs, and Beth knows this, just try it. We don't need you to buy it. We're not banking on you for our business. Mast cell is not part of our business plan. But what we do, and we've been doing for 13 years, and every single person on our team is built this way, we want to help. We have something that can help. We think it's really simple to use. It's not simple to explain. That's why just try it. I used to do 4-hour lectures. I was like, no one understands any of this. Even to medical communities, like, what did you learn in medical school? How come you don't know the etiology of stress? I don't know why I'm educating you. I just started coming in, hey, let's demo it, and then we'll answer your questions. I mean, like, literally, it's the same kind of thing. So where you put the disc is important. So you take 3 fingers, and it's got to be your fingers, not mine or somebody else's. And at 2.5 finger points, that's the pericardium 6 acupressure point. If you press on it, it becomes uncomfortable. It's a pressure point. That's where you send on the disc. If it's up here too high or down here too low, you're not, and we want you to have the maximum effect.
It's going to go where these tendons are going down here. So you can kind of feel these tendons on yourself, and it just goes right in the middle. And you don't have to be precise to the millimeter. You just kind of you're going to be in the right area.
Don't put it on your shoulder or your forehead. It won't give you the results. And so this is our medical grade. This is what we have our patents on. This is what we do our surgeries in. For many people who don't report, issues with stress management or sleep or feel relatively healthy, especially younger folks, the iMask and the NeuroCoo software are perfect. They're brilliant. They don't need this. But for many of the folks we work with, especially around trauma, so I would say, give your brain the best tools. It knows how to use all of these pieces of equipment, and give it a month, and then you can dial off later. You don't need to be committed to the medical grade, but to start, especially if you're trying to go from 50% health to 60%, let's give you the best we've got.
It's worth a shot, you guys, especially if you have a sensitive nervous system. I was really surprised. This was before I started learning about the quantum fields. And then it made sense after I started learning about that, why it's working. But it's working on those meridians that drive GABA, which is that really calming neurotransmitter. And for anybody who has glutamate issues, so if you're dealing with insomnia, anxiety, ADD, your brain won't settle down, you've got multiple tracks of thought, and you can't concentrate, GABA is one of the things that's really important to help settle the mind and settle the nervous system. I wanted to pop up a few questions here, and we had just a lovely comment. Let me see if I can get back to it. So one of our community members, Bethany, said NuCalm transformed her physiology. She's so glad to be a part of this movement. And thank you for posting that, Bethany. Appreciate it. And we had some questions that came in here. Is this safe?
What's
been your experience for people with tinnitus and sound sensitivity?
That's Yeah, it's such a difficult condition. I have a son. You can see the picture of him who's in the Marines, and guess what? He has hearing problems now. It's trial and error. We have some people who have a really profound response, like, wow, I'm not cured, but I get relief during NuCalm and for quite a bit of time afterwards. We have other people who've used this and, wow, it made it worse. So I don't know. And it's a hard condition to even test. But we've got 13 years of doing this and millions of subjects over the entire globe, if you will. I would say try it. And ideally, most of the people report a positive response, but you're not most people, right? You're unique.
Yeah. And we don't have the sample size you have, David, but we've got, probably a good 50 people at this point that have tried it. And we're having people who have sound sensitivity, tinnitus, or sensitivities in general to actually just set a timer, or just, if you can do it, if you're going to fall asleep, set a timer. But then just start with 2 or 3 minutes and then see how you do, and then try. And I know, David, that we got to get through that initial period to get the benefits. So you may not get the benefits, but just check how it's going to be for your ears, and then work your way into the full recording.
Yeah, you're coaching and training your central nervous system, your autonomic nervous system, and your neuronal pathways for different phenomena. But what I would recommend for some of these conditions is you can play the software with no volume.
Oh,
Volume is for really the experience. And if we just had the physics, it would be white noise, which is really irritating. But we have people who are legally deaf in surgical settings. We put the headphones on. Your ears are carriers, right? So the signaling is getting in there.
The vibration is carrying.
Yep, vibration.
Yeah. Oh, that's
so with no sound and start there and see if that works better.
That's great. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. So start with it. If you're really sensitive, you have sound sensitivity, you have tinnitus, start with the volume off and see what happens with just the vibrations. That's wonderful. I'm really curious. So if anybody with tinnitus tries this or sound sensitivity, please let me know your experience. I would love to know what happens, because this is how we learn this stuff. And then, David, I'd be happy to send it back over to you guys and see what we're seeing in this population. Yeah. We've got a bunch of questions. I'm going to try to run through them, but some people are going to have to hop off here before we get through the questions. So I just want to make sure, pop this up, you all. You can take a screenshot if you like, that you can get a 7-day free trial if you use the link, maskcell360.com/NuCalm, NuCalm. And then once that expires, you can get monthly subscriptions, normally $30 a month. You can get it for $9.99 for 3 months. So that's a huge deal. So $9.99 a month for 3 months. And there's your coupon code. It's MC360. So grab that snapshot. If you're not sure, go ahead and grab it. And that way you have the information. You have to come back. And this is recorded, so you can go back and watch it anytime. But that way you'll have it if you want to refer to it. And I've got a few that are kind of specific to our community, so I'm going to run through those. NuCalm can be done, Mary, with Primal Trust, and that's our core. That's our base offering for people in our clinic. Is now we've upgraded to Primal Trust and NuCalm, and that combination. And Primal Trust is one of the limbic programs that's really trauma informed, David, and that's why we combine those. And I know, Tiffany, we really talked a lot about how the program actually works. So hopefully you caught all of that. And if you have more questions, there's lots of information on their website. There's lots of information. And I've seen it podcasts with you, David. So you can look up David Poole. And then Tyler's asking, would it be helpful for passive listening while going about your day versus lying down with a mask?
Absolutely. So we've got the binaural delivery. We also have an isochronic. You can listen to it. We do this in nursing homes and in daycare centers to relax people. It's your brain will respond. It's not as prolific or profound without the headphones. But for example, we have a focus category or product that puts your brain in the 18 to 19 hertz category with the same entrainment, like we bring you down to theta or down to delta. So I use that for productivity, and it's really interesting because everyone thinks distractions are external. No, they're all in your brain. And when you get that brainwave frequency in this sweet spot, you're going to find out that you're extremely productive. It lasts about you want to do critical thinking for about 20 minutes before you reach diminished returns. But you can wear this around. It'll help with relaxation, certainly. With the deep sleep, by the way, you don't wear headphones. You use a speaker in your room. We don't recommend using a phone speaker because they're not capable enough of delivering the broad spectrum of the physics. But we have many people who have NuCalm habits, just going about their daily chores, tasks. And then the Ignite, which you haven't tried, Beth, and I wouldn't recommend someone trying it until you're 100% healthy. That puts you into a mistake-free zone, and you can wear that at the gym.
I'm so primed for sympathetic that I think I'll stay with the the sleep suite for a while here.
Yeah.
Well, let me get through some of the others. So, Rosemary, it's not voice guided, and so it's very soothing. The suite that I showed you is very soothing. And then Kanisha, I hope you can next week. We're going to talk about these EMF blockers. So we'll be back the same time on Tuesday at 1 Eastern. And then some people are asking about, here we go, Deborah, is this vagal or limbic and amygdala? And so many do both, because we've got vagal nerve branches to the ears. It's going to retrain the amygdala. And so I try to simplify things and say, okay, Primal Trust is going to be your limbic program. NuCalm is going to be your vagal program. But they all have overlaps. And what's helpful, I find, is if we have a few modalities. Most people need at least two. They need something that gives you some context and some practices where you have a dialogue and explore the limbic patterns, and then something that's passive. So this is the passive that's our recommendation. Do you want to add to that, David? And I'll grab some of the last questions.
The more you train your brain to experience good versus experiencing bad, the more likely you'll build resilience. So I would say it's very much can help you train the amygdala and limbic system. When we work with someone with acute PTSD, we let them achieve balance, achieve a foundational support network, and where they don't feel like they're in constant fight or flight. Then we actually use NuCalm to go after the PTSD. We say, okay, the next time you do this, here's your intention. You're going to think about the moment, the traumatic moment, what happened to you. And they get really standoffish, like, no, thanks. Don't ever want to go there. Spend the whole life running from that moment. But what happens in NuCalm is that your primitive survival function is offline. So you're not going to have elevated heart rate, blood pressure, muscle tension. And over time, you can start thinking about the traumatic event, and your brain says, hey, I can think about this without having a stress response. And it gives you access to that memory so you can start working through that memory. So it's, like I said before, it's a special friend, never judges you, deliver what you want when you want it. And you just need to make time to do it.
So I popped this back up here. I shifted it so we could get our questions at the bottom. So that's the offer, you guys. And then Deborah was asking, so Dr. Nathan talks about using vagus and limbic, and Dr. Nathan is kind of the champion for this sort of people, and he's my mentor. And so how does this play out? So Dr. Nathan a lot of times talks about using a limbic program and then a vagal program. He talked a lot about DNRS or Gupta and brain tap. And now we've been exploring and shifting into something more targeted for this audience. This is the same concepts, Deborah. So we're shifting into Primal Trust, which Dr. Nathan's also endorsing. And then NuCalm, I've been letting him know about, and he's very happy with that as well. So they're all synergistic. So I hope that works. Kelly was asking, can the discs be used on benzos? And Amy from NuCalm is here too, asking or answering, and she said yes, because the disc signal transmit a signal for GABA. But I really want to put this point up here because I missed this. The discs are sent in a little bag that's a Faraday cage. And I had mine sitting out, and I set my phone on it, and I erased or scrambled whatever information was in all of them, and they were useless. So don't do that. Keep them in the Faraday cage, and don't put a smart device setting on top of your your stickers, keep them in that plastic bag, and then don't put an Apple Watch or anything that's got Wi-Fi or Bluetooth sitting on top of it, because it's going to erase the information there. And then Tiffany was asking, is it full trial or is it limited? And
full access to every product we have, all 6 products.
So you'll have access to all the 6, and then it'll renew to the Sleep Suite, and that's what you'll have for the $9.99, I believe.
Yep.
But don't use the Ignite, you guys. So just skip that.
Please don't. It's not worth the experiment. Yeah.
Elizabeth, I've not seen any trouble or contraindications with medical THC use for sleep. Do you have anything you want to add, David?
Yeah, I mean, a common theme, and I get all this because we all have decisions we make, and we don't want to interrupt or dilute some of the therapies we believe in. NuCalm, at the end of the day, is a biomimetic of your natural sleep phenomenon. So we interrupt the stress response. We guide you down to alpha and theta brainwave dominance, which is exactly what happens every single night if you're a healthy sleeper for sleep. So we can't do any harm. There's nothing we can do to your body, because when it's a biomimetic, your body already knows how to do this. So I've had people who were very unwell on drugs and alcohol because they were trying to cope with a surgical experience, and they'd show up and the doctor said, "Hey, do you want to put on NuCalm?" I was like, "I think we should call the police. That person looks really dangerous and really unpredictable and wild. I don't trust them around me." And we put on a NuCalm, and 4 minutes later, they'd be out. I was like, wow, that NuCalm saved my life and this person from a prison sentence. That was a wild experience. So it's biomimetic. You can't interrupt or interfere with NuCalm. We've even had people who do 2 shots of espresso and say, "Oh no, I forgot. I just had coffee when I do NuCalm," and they're out like everybody else.
Well, that's good. That's nice. Yeah. And I just want to set the expectation for our community members that if you don't have the level of brain inflammation that a lot of us here have had, you might get those pretty quick results. But if that's not happening, give it a couple months. Just give it a try. You should have some, I would say, over the first couple weeks, some gradual improvements from what I've seen in our community. And we talk a lot, David, about we've got 3 sensitivity levels. So we have robust, and these are people who can take any supplements. They're not sensitive to light or sounds. They can take medications. They're just really not sensitive. So if you're in that category, you can jump in and do the whole 30, 40, 50-minute recording. Just dive in, just probably don't do Ignite. But if you're in our sensitive category, and that means you can take some supplements, you've got some sensitivities, probably have some chemical or EMF sensitivity, and you have to start things slowly with sprinkles and build your way up. Then you might start with 5 or 10 minutes of rescue and just go slowly, or 5 or 10 minutes of the sound ones, or the sleep ones. But I typically, for our sensitive clients, I'm telling them start with rescue and do it earlier in the day, and just give yourself that time to reset. And then once you're used to that, you can add the ones before bed. If you're in our super sensitive level, so that's people who are having to do a sprinkle of a supplement, that means like a few granules and 24 ounces of water, stir it and take a drop of that into a glass of water. And maybe that's causing them to react. So if that's you, and you're really down to very few foods, you can't get supplements hardly on board at any kind, everything you put in your mouth you're reacting with, then that's the people who are doing best if you start with 1, 2, or 3 minutes. And then every day or every 3 or 4 days, or if you're really, really sensitive, at once a week, you can add a couple minutes. And you might start with what David talked about, which is the sound off, and just let the vibrations, the frequency follow you. So I think that hits almost all our questions, like this last one from Rosemary. If you have anything to add quickly, David, as we wrap up here.
Yes, Rosemary absolutely has everything to do with hypnosis. It's hypnosis through the auditory canal. And that's what makes it predictable. And that's
but there's not going to be hypnotic instructions in there. It's more brain state. But I think that some people worry about hypnosis programming something that they don't want programmed in.
Absolutely not. We don't have the interest or sophistication to do that. This is literally an exploration of your subconscious. So when you first start using NuCalm, the first couple of minutes, your brain will challenge it. It wants that control. It says, this is silly. What am I doing? Why did I listen to Beth and David? And then all of a sudden, the reality starts to splinter a little bit. And then the next thing you know, you drop off a cliff and you're just daydreaming. And that's what will happen every single time you use it. But no, this is not hypnosis to plant information or anything like that.
There is a brain state people have to be in, and I think that's what you're calling to, is it's going to help you go into that. So you can do auto suggestions, meaning that you can, sometimes I'll go into these meditative states and I'll go in with something like, I want to stay regulated through my whole day the best that I can. And so I'll insert something like that for myself, but there aren't any messages inserted for you. And so that might be what she's going at. Well, thank you so much, David. I wanted to leave this up in case anybody needs to grab the screenshot. This is your free trial offer, and then you can save $20 a month for 3 months if you go for the monthly subscription, which is a great deal, you guys. And so over 3 months, that saves you $60. I really want to appreciate and thank you for this offer, but also for coming on and sharing all this information with us.
My pleasure. Looking forward to working with you, and thanks for considering us, Beth. We know what we have in NuCalm. Your team or your clients have no idea, but looking forward to their journey.
Yeah. And we'd love to hear your feedback and see what you're noticing. Leslie, it just, jumped there. Does not require electricity at night to work. You can still turn off your breaker. You can run the app off your phone in airplane mode. So it's pretty easy. It's pretty simple app, simple to download and all of that. All right, everyone, it's so good to be with you. We're going to be back next week. We're going to be talking about Pranon. We're going to talk about quantum fields and using those to shield yourself from EMFs. I'm super excited. We have Roger Billica joining us, who was the former medical lead for NASA and the personal physician for John Glenn when he went back up to space. So we're going to have a really cool discussion. Thank you again, David. It's so wonderful to be with you today.
Thank you for having me. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.